Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Q&A. I'm here with Bonnie from Archer and Olive. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And today, Bonnie's going to be showing us how to paint with gouache paint. So we've gone over watercolor many times, and I think a lot of people are familiar with watercolor, but it's rare to see somebody painting with gouache. And we're going to get into how all of that works and what the difference is. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that if you're watching this in the first 24 hours that it's been live, make sure you leave a comment below and you're going to be entered to win a giveaway. Usually we're giving away my brush pens, but today we're actually giving away one of Bonnie's journals, which are amazing and very sought after and also sold out a lot of the time. So it's kind of awesome that we're going to be able to do this as a giveaway. So yeah, comment within the first 24 hours below and you'll be automatically entered. But other than that, I think we're good to get started. So Bonnie, before we get into your lesson, can you just let everybody know who you are, what you do, how you got into all of this stuff?
Sure. Well, I'm Bonnie, and I am the owner of Archer and Olive. And if you guys haven't heard about Archer and Olive, we make stationery products for artists. So if you're interested in kind of a crossover on paper goods and creating art, Archer and Olive is a really good brand for you. I kind of got into it because I pursued a degree in graphic design in college, but we were forced to take fine arts as well. And so when I was, taking those courses, I really fell in love with the painting classes, and my love for nature and flowers kind of just went hand in hand with that. So I started painting florals at that time, and it just kind of grew into my job. So it's been a really, really fun time.
And I mean, you're talking mostly about you as an artist, but like your business has just gone crazy in the past couple years with your journals and bullet journaling and all that kind of stuff too, which we'll get into. But I mean, how long ago was it that you started?
Oh, yeah. So I started about 3 or 4 years ago as a wedding stationer. And so I was doing custom stuff for my clients. But I always had it in my heart and my mind that I wanted to create journals and just stationery for artists. And so finally, when I had a little bit of funds to put it towards like the business I always wanted to have, I was like, I'm just gonna take the jump and I'm just gonna do it. And it starts off a little bit slow, but I think when people realize like, hey, there's a journal that I can paint in or use, whatever kind of art supplies I want to in it. I saw that there was just a really big need for that in the community. And over the past year, we've taken off so much so that I can't keep my stock. So hopefully that's a problem of the past, but that's where we are today.
Yeah, hopefully it's a problem of the past, but it's also an amazing problem to have. So kudos to you for
Yeah.
growing that quickly. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thanks.
Um, and so speaking of those journals being able to take gouache, like I said in the intro, what you're going to be showing us today is how to paint with gouache. And I think a lot of people are a little bit confused about what gouache even is and how it all works. So maybe I'll just let you turn your camera over onto your hands and we can get right into your lesson, and then we can chat more afterwards about more businessy things and how your journals are going.
Sounds great.
Perfect.
Okay, so one of the questions I get all the time is, what is gouache? And I feel like a lot of people don't even know how to pronounce that word, but you can kind of say it like squash, is how I always remember it. So the difference between gouache and watercolor is that gouache is just going to have this really opaque finish. I like it because the colors are going to be bold and vibrant, and it's really easy to layer and produce these beautiful florals. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools that I use. My favorite brand of paint is going to be this Winsor and Newton. The quality of the paint you use is really going to make a difference. Now, there are a few other brands that I like to use, which I cover in my gouache course, that are a little bit less than Winsor and Newton. But if you really want to get top of the line, I definitely recommend this brand. I will also be using my Winsor and Newton University Series 233 round brush. I like the size 0 for the tiny little floral details. They always keep a pretty pointy tip, which is really important when you're working with small little details like these lines you can see on the florals. Then, of course, you're going to need your palette. I use palette paper because it's easy to store. And I've found that if you're using a plastic palette, it can kind of get stained. So I think the palette paper is a little bit easier. Of course, you're going to have your water for rinsing your brushes. And it's really important to have a paper towel so you can kind of blot off water. And then, of course, your canvas, which for me, I like a very smooth canvas. So I found that cardstock that's about 80 pound or like 160 GSM is going to be really ideal for painting with gouache. The first thing I'm going to do, and one of the questions I get asked the most, is going to be talk about how I get these really smooth, clean lines. As you can see here, there's not going to be a lot of bleeding. The lines just look really crisp and smooth. So I'm going to kind of go over how I do that, and then we're going to learn how to paint some leaves. Usually I talk about mixing colors, but today we're just going to talk about how to mix the paint with the water to get that consistency. When it comes right out of the tube, I'll show you the difference here. It's going to be too dry to work with, so you're going to have a lot of trouble.
So Bonnie, we actually can't see that the bottom of your, there we go.
Sorry.
There we go. That's perfect.
Yeah. So when it comes out of that tube, it's going to be too dry, and I'll show you how, hi Archer. I'll show you how you know your gouache is too dry, because when you paint with it, it's going to be really streaky like that, and that is not something that you want.
Is Archer your cat's name?
Yeah, Archer and Olive.
Oh my God. So you have two cats, and that's where your business name came from.
Yes, and he loves my paint water. Anytime I'm painting, he is just like in on that, here
I
for it.
could just see, you could just see his, like the shadow of his ears.
Oh. Well, he might make an appearance, so.
If I named my business after my cats, it'd be Jimmy and Marge. Not quite as like eloquent as Archer and Olive.
That's so cute though. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is going to be too dry, and then a lot of people also make the mistake of making it too wet, which can be a technique if you like the way it looks, but that's going to be more like watercolor. You're going to know it's too wet if you paint and it's opaque or it's transparent. You really don't want it transparent unless you're trying to use it like watercolor. So you need a good mixture between the two. And what I always do is I take my brush, and as you can see, I'm like obsessively dabbing it off here on this paper towel, because I don't want any on that silver part, the part that's holding the bristles. It could just, fall onto your brush and then cause more water than you intended to get into your paint. So I'm kind of dabbing that off, and then I'll put a few drops here on my canvas, kind of dab it off again. And then what I like to do is I like to pull the water into the paint and kind of mix it together until the consistency feels right. Um, you can never really tell by looking at your brush. It just takes a little bit of practice. But what I do is I have a scrap piece of paper where I test out the consistency first. And that's how I know I can begin my painting. So as you can see, that's really dark. It's really opaque, and there's not a lot of streaking in that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and learn how to paint one of the leaves, which is one of my favorite and probably one of the easiest to do. So you want to get
Your cat's making me so nervous. I feel like
I
he's
know,
gonna
I'm just
knock
gonna
something
go.
over.
Again, I know. He does this all the time. I'm so used to it in my paintings. Like, I've just blocked it out of my mind. Now, usually what I do is I have a separate dish of water for him, and I put it somewhere far away, but still on my desk, so he thinks he's participating, but he's not.
Smart.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna learn how to paint this leaf right here. It's one of the easiest to learn, and it looks really nice. So I always start with a stem, and your stem you really can't mess up on, because stems are not perfectly straight in nature. They're not perfectly curved in nature. So whatever kind of line you draw, you're just going to go with it, and there's ways to make it look good. I like to draw like a curved line, and for the finer details, or for the you kind of want to hold your brush. You don't want to hold it straight up and down, but you don't want to hold it completely parallel. So you kind of want to get a good in between. And then on the tip of your brush, very, very gently, you're going to draw a curved line. I usually try to make it a little bit pointier at the end and a little bit thicker at the base. If you don't do this in the first stroke, like it's okay because you can always come back and, add a few more strokes there at the base. And it's subtle, but you can kind of see a difference. And then I put the very tip top leaf on this stem, and these are going to be like, what I do first is I draw the outline of the leaf, and then I'll go back and I'll fill it in. And so the outline is kind of like two parentheses coming together. So you start here at the very tip, and it connects at the tip of the stem, and then you go back to the other side and you draw the same thing. And the reason I do the outline first is if you mess up, which because I'm not, hovering right over my art, I can't see, but it doesn't look perfect to me. That's okay. You can always just come back and kind of redraw that line. You can draw it as many times as you want until it feels right. And also, like, one thing I like to do is because in nature, your lines, nothing is perfectly symmetrical. So just because this one doesn't exactly match up to this one, that's actually a good thing. And it kind of gives it more of a feel of how it would, appear in nature. Then I also like to really add like a pointy tip. So I'm going to come back here and kind of redraw that line until the tip is super pointy. Okay. And once you have that, you fill it in. And I will leave the center of the leaf white for the vein. Again, if you mess up, it's really okay because all you have to do is kind of redraw your outer edge. I won't spend too much time trying to get that tip really pointy because it requires me hovering about 1 inch over the canvas to see. So we'll just leave it like that. The next thing you want to do is to draw the branches coming off of the leaf. And so what I like to do to kind of get a good idea of space is to actually now start with a leaf. And the leaf is going to kind of define the perimeter of the entire plant. So I think I only want it to extend out to here. So again, I'm going to draw a leaf. We'll color that in. Then you can draw a stem connecting it to the other stem. So one thing I really love, and this is a rule that you can break, but I think if you're just starting off, it's a good rule to follow, is that in nature, things come like in odd numbers a lot of the time. So we're going to have branches with 3 leaves on them, and I think that's what I'm going to do right now. And then you can always change it up later on when you feel more comfortable, but I think it's a good idea to start with odd numbers on your branch. So I think we want another leaf right here. And we'll color it in. When you color it in, you can kind of push a little bit harder on your brush. As you see, I start with the tip, and then as I go down further, I kind of push down a little bit more just to get more paint on the canvas. And then when you're working on the very fine details, like the tip of the leaf, you almost go perpendicular to your page and just so softly press the brush to the canvas. So then I'll just kind of finish up this little guy. And I kind of want to add the same thing on the other side, but I don't want to make it symmetrical. So I'm going to connect the stem a little bit higher up on the plant. And we're going to do the same thing, add the leaf to the end, color it in, leaving the center part white, and then add the other 2 leaves. The good thing about gouache is that it's all the colors are really opaque. So if you make a mistake and like say you accidentally color in the center part of your leaf when you intended to leave it white, you can just get some white paint and go over it because it will be opaque enough to cover that. See, like on here, I made this mistake and I made that accident, that line go too long, but that's okay. We're just gonna come around, make the leaf a little bit bigger. So now I want to add another odd number of leaves. So I'm gonna do one up top. And the same thing on the other side. The only difference is I'm going to add this one on the bottom. This way there's balance in the leaf, but it's not symmetrical. As you can see, it's kind of weighted the same on this side as it is on this side. So it gives you a sense of balance, but it's not going to be symmetrical, which doesn't happen in nature. So that's really going to be all for this lesson. But if you want to learn more, I did just release a course on gouache, and we learn how to paint this leaf as well as some of these florals you see up here. And I think there's about 12 printable PDFs which you can kind of paint over to get the shape right before trying it on your own. So I'll go ahead and flip my camera around now.
So that was awesome. I'm always like in awe of how like fine and perfect all of your flowers are. Like I just feel like I'm such a messy person, and like your ability to make these like little tiny things is so cool. But when you see it in a lesson like that, you make it look a lot less intimidating than it looks when you finish piece.
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy when you have the right tools. So it shouldn't scare you from trying it.
And right at the end, you casually mentioned that you launched a new course. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's inside that course and like what people can expect from it?
Sure. So I go over all the basics of gouache. I know I kind of talked through them a little bit at the beginning, but I kind of give recommendations for like cheaper brands if you don't want to, invest like hundreds of dollars in the nicest stuff right away. There are cheaper options you can use and see if you like it before making that investment. And then of course I kind of give recommendations for like where you can save money when you're trying to start painting. Um, then we cover the technique, which is how to mix the paint in the water to get that really smooth, clean edge. And there's exercises, which I also talk about, that you can kind of put into practice so that you just get real comfortable with the feel of the paint and how it should feel when it's applied to the canvas. Of course, we talk about color theory because like the best thing about gouache are the bright colors. So everybody wants to know how to mix them, how to get the right color palettes. And then at the very end, we definitely have a really long segment about painting the florals, which is everybody's favorite thing to do. And I believe there's 12 PDFs, a 12-page PDF, which you can print off, and it has something you can kind of trace over with the paint so that you can start to see how it feels to get that shape right before you kind of do it on your own.
And so I know that this is going to be kind of last minute for people because this video is coming out on March 29th and your course closes on April 2nd, right?
Yes.
So that means that at the time that this video comes out, you have 5 days to get access to Bonnie's course. But if you're into painting gouache florals, then it's awesome. And what's the easiest place for people to find that course? Like what would the URL be?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is archerandolive.com, and then in the navigation bar, it just says courses. When you just click on that, you'll see the Introduction to Gouache Florals course.
And you made a coupon code for us, right?
I did. So if you want to get 15% off, the coupon code is going to be Becca15. And when you go to sign up, you can just put that in and it'll automatically apply that for you.
So so at the time of this video going live, you have 5 days if you want to get access to that. So hop to it. But I just also wanted to quickly talk a little more about your, like the other things that you do, the journals and the bullet journaling and all of that, because you use your journals and you put like where you're doing most of those florals is in your journals for bullet journaling and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because when I started bullet journaling, I was like, this is really great, but I wanted to find a way to get my productivity and creativity to kind of like be one and the same. And so I was like, I want to actually start painting in my journal. And I noticed with some of the other journals out there, like there would be a lot of ghosting or bleeding or a lot of warping of the page. So I was like, meh, I'm just going to create these journals for myself. And, if people like them, great. And if not, at least I have, a huge stash of notebooks I can go through. And, everybody, a lot of artists feel the same way. Like they want to be able to use a lot of different types of medium in their notebooks. So it kind of just fell into what it is today.
And well, I mean, you use it for paint, obviously, but I think even just the people that are listening from my audience want to be using it with like heavier brush pens or just anything that might go through the page. Because
Yeah.
even I, like I think I told you, started bullet journaling recently, and I noticed in just the journals that I've been buying, like they're high quality journals, but they still, you can see through them, especially when you've
Yeah.
got like those really thick lines in your calligraphy. So
Yeah.
I am really excited to get one of yours.
Oh,
It's on
yeah.
the way. It's pre-ordered.
Yes, and they'll be shipping very soon. So,
Awesome. Well, just a reminder to anybody that is interested in one of those journals that if you comment within the next 24 hours, you could win one. So make sure you've done that. But other than that, Bonnie, was there anything else that you wanted to chat about today or tell people about?
no, well, I guess I did want to mention in the course the reason I kind of have that tight deadline is because I make myself available to my students. So anytime you have a question, there is a place in the course where you can send it to me and I am like on it. I am going to respond to your emails right away. I'm happy to take a look at your pictures to give you suggestions. Um, I know we launched this course last year as well, and a lot of students were like, hey, this isn't looking quite right. And I was able to say, oh, I think you're using a little bit too much water, so I definitely make myself available. And that's why I have to put a cap on it. But April 2nd is the deadline.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like a lot of online courses don't have that accessibility to the teacher, so it's definitely a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be like as in person as I can without being in person.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, so the easiest place for people to find you is archerandolive.com.
Yes.
And your Instagram would just be the same thing, Archer and Olive.
Yep.
And to anybody who's watching and hasn't checked out Bonnie's Instagram yet, you need to do it because it's one of my favorite accounts to just like sit there and look at all of it. It's just so satisfying. Everything you do, like the pictures are perfect, the crisp lines on all your paintings, like everything, just like A plus.
Well,
Fantastic
thank
work.
you. Thanks.
Yeah, so archerandolive.com, and April 2nd, your course closes. Comment below if you want to win a journal. But other than that, I think that's pretty much all we've got. So thank you so much, Bonnie, for coming on. It was lovely to hang out with you and learn more about gouache. And I'm going to have you back on to talk about bullet journaling next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Becca.
Awesome. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.